Hi, and welcome to Determining Your Career Path, where I'm going to tell you a bit about product management. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Laura Kersop. I've got 10 years experience making products in EdTech. I was director of product at FutureLearn, which is an online courses marketplace and one of Europe's biggest EdTech companies. I was head of product at the Raspberry Pi Foundation, which is a charity that empowers young people to make things with technology. And now I consult through my own company, which is called 1870 Education. And in a previous life before product, I was a primary school teacher that specialized in computing. So I'm going to talk you through 5 different things today. So I'm going to start by talking about product management. What is it? I'm going to tell you what I think the characteristics of effective product managers are. I'm going to discuss how the role varies from company to company and team to team. I'm going to talk you through a day in the life of a product manager. And then finally, I'll discuss how to tell whether it's the right job for you. So I saw this quote on LinkedIn the other day, and I thought it summed up product management really nicely. Product management is the art, science, and practice of making successful products and making products successful. And when I stumbled into product 10 years ago, it was quite opaque and hard to understand from the outside what it actually was. But now I feel like we're gaining more of a shared understanding across the discipline about what product management is. And it's becoming a bit more formalized. So it's actually a really great time to join the profession. And we've seen the demand for product managers sharply increasing across all sectors. And the salaries are really great. The average product manager salary in London is reported by Glassdoor as being 57k. And the more entry-level associate PM role is almost 37k. But what is product management? How do you make successful products or make products more successful? The way I like to summarize it is that you're constantly taking in and creating insight as inputs. And as the product manager, it's your job to understand these and rationalize them and drive action. And so the inputs you take in include things like customer insight, market insight, competitor analysis, business priorities, and also stakeholders' opinions. And then informed by those inputs, you instigate a variety of different actions, such as user research, solving problems, designing, experimenting, and iteratively building new features and products. And in the process of doing these actions or these activities, you're discovering new things which become inputs, and then the loop goes back round again. But importantly, you, as the product manager, are working every day with people from other disciplines who also really care about making the product successful. So product management is often referred to as a team sport. You'll usually lead and collaborate day to day with a multidisciplinary team that includes designers, software engineers, user researchers, and data scientists. And you'll also work closely with other stakeholders, such as marketeers or salespeople. Now, in EdTech, I most frequently collaborate with education specialists because a huge part of making a successful product in EdTech is making sure that the product actually helps people to learn things. But even though it's a team sport, the product manager is super important. They are fundamental to bringing everything and everyone together in order to make the product successful. And having managed product managers and seen many in action, I would say there are some common characteristics of those that are particularly good. Firstly, they are very empathetic to their team and stakeholders and their users. Secondly, they are able to build a coherent picture or story out of insight. They can drive decision-making in ambiguous or chaotic situations. They are clear communicators that can influence people of all different levels. And finally, they can adapt well to changes and to new situations. Now, whilst there is growing consensus about what product management is as a discipline, the role does vary depending on the organization or even what team you're in. So, I'm going to talk through each of these factors in turn. So, firstly, the role often shifts depending on the people available in the team or the level of skill that they have. So, for example, you'll have to lean more heavily into the design process if you're working with a junior designer. Or if you're working in a team that doesn't have a user researcher, you and the product designer will need to collaborate to get this type of work done. Another factor that really affects the role is the sector that you work in. I think one of the really great things is that there are product managers working across all different sectors. So, just in ed tech alone, I've worked in a commercial for profit company, the public sector, and the third sector in an education charity. And all of these different types of organizations have different motivations and different definitions of what success looks like. So, for example, in commercial companies, they are generally optimizing their products for growth and for revenue. In publicly funded companies or organizations, they are looking to cut costs or increase access to services. And in charities, they're usually looking to have a tangible impact on their beneficiaries. There are also product led companies in different industries, and this will affect what the role looks like day to day. So, for example, in fintech or financial tech, you have challenger banks like Monzo and Starling. And in health tech, you have organizations like Babylon Health or Unmind. And some of these companies are B2C, which means they're selling to consumers, and others will be B2B, which means they're selling to businesses. And all of these different industries will have different customer insight, market insight, and regulations driving them, which can mean the sorts of inputs you're taking in as a product manager are different. And so, inevitably, the solutions that you're designing and building are different too. I think the fact that the role is available across different industries makes it possible to identify your own interests and perhaps look to your previous experience and seek an organization in an industry that aligns with them. Another factor that affects the product role is the maturity of the product that you're working on. So, products vary in terms of where they are in the product life cycle. So, some products are in the process of being conceived and introduced to the market, while others might have been around for ages and be huge legacy products that are in more of a maintenance and iteration mode. And the sorts of activities you'll do as a product manager will vary depending on the stage of the product. So, for example, if you're introducing a new product to the market, you'll be working closely with your colleagues from a variety of disciplines to define and design the proposition from scratch. And this might involve things like creating prototypes and minimum viable products to test with customers. But if you're working on an established product, you'll be improving parts of it incrementally or perhaps retiring features that users no longer need. One of the things that I think affects the role most is the size of the company. So if you're a PM working in an earlier stage small startup, you might be the only PM and report directly into the CEO. But if you're in a large company, you might have multiple layers of product management like this. Now, bigger organizations are more likely to take on junior or associate PMs because they'll have lots of people and time to support them. And as a product manager in a large company, your role might be more focused than the PM at the startup, but you would also have more colleagues to learn from and perhaps more chance for promotion into those senior positions in the hierarchy. And lots of larger companies also have specialist product roles, such as growth PM, who are specifically skilled in growing the user base of products, or technical PMs, who are PMs that have a higher degree of technical knowledge and therefore work on more technical problems and solutions. So, as you can see from my tour of all these factors, the product role can really vary from company to company or even team to team. And the variety is a really huge bonus because it means you can choose organizations that reflect your values, your interests, and your skills. And when you start to work in a new organization, there's always a lot to learn, which means you're constantly evolving your skill set. Now, before I became a PM, I read everything I could find about product management, but I still couldn't picture it. And it wasn't until I shadowed a product manager in action that I really understood what the job involved. So, in order to bring it to life, I want to show you what a day in the life of a product manager might look like. So, you are very likely to start every day in a quick meeting called a stand up with your team. And in this meeting, you'll look at your workboard, discuss what work your team have completed, what's in progress, and what's coming up next. And it's a really good way to check in with each other and make sure that everyone has what they need to progress well in their day. And after the stand-up, I find it's usually a really good moment to spend time with your team members on anything that needs urgent attention. So, for example, you and a data scientist might spend time with one of the engineers to get their input on an experiment that you're planning. Later in the morning, you might have a meeting with the other product managers and your boss. And in this meeting, you'll look at the strategic goals and plans for the quarter, discuss how things are progressing overall, and make any necessary adjustments to future plans. Your boss might also update you on what's been happening at a more senior level in the company. And afterwards, you'll likely share some of this information that you've learned with your team and feed it into your plans. At 12 p.m., you might really dig into your Slack and email messages. There will be many, especially if you're in a large company, and make sure that you've answered everything. This is a sort of time where you might get a message from somebody, for example, in marketing, and that message might be better solved in person. So you might jump on a quick call to explain something to them about a feature you're releasing and how it should be communicated to users. You'll also need to draft your bi-weekly updates to share with senior stakeholders, which highlight to them what progress you've been making in a team and alert them to any risks or blockers that you might have identified. And after lunch in the afternoon, you might collaborate with your user researcher on some user interviews, which are taking place throughout the week. Now, usually the user researcher will have planned the session and lead the interview whilst you observe and take notes. And it's a really good opportunity to understand, in this instance, how a solution the team has come up with lands with users. And the insight you learn will be used to adapt designs ahead of the engineers starting to build something in the coming weeks. So you'll be able to put what you learn into action really quickly. At 3 p.m., you've just finished the interview and you go back to your desk, but you see a message from the designer in your team, and she wants to grab you to talk through something that she's figuring out. So you look together at some user flows she's drawn up in order to work out how to simplify a part of the user experience on your product. And together you work out a way to make it even simpler. And then the designer will take the action to talk it through with the software engineering lead to see if it makes sense from a technical perspective. And finally, at 4 p.m., you have a regular meeting that happens every 2 weeks called Backlog refinement. And this is a chance for the whole team to get together and review user stories on your backlog board. You might deep dive into a few stories that are important to get done soon and iron out some of the details with the engineers, making sure that the stories are at the top of the list for them to be picked up. And you'll make sure that the engineers understand the rationale behind the stories, including sharing developing insights from user research. So after seeing a day in the life, what do you think? Is product management for you? As you can see from my walkthrough of a day, it's definitely busy. Your day is never ever boring. It's also highly collaborative. As I said before, product management is a team sport. So you'll spend almost all of your day in meetings and collaborating with other people. It's also incredibly varied. So every day you do a mixture of strategic and tactical and reactive work. I think it's incredibly mentally stimulating. There's always lots of problems to solve and connections to make between things. And finally, for all of that hard work, you are rewarded. It is well paid. Good product managers are in demand, and I've seen the salary growth over the last few years, and it's been really astonishing. So I hope that I've given you a good insight into product management as a career. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you at the QA session on the 3rd of August. And if you have any questions for me and the other guests, please submit them in the link in the email.
Hello, and welcome to this video on how to decide if product management is the right career choice for you. My name's Tracy Schuff. I'm a career coach at 4th Rev, and I work with learners on career accelerator programs, including product management ones at King's. What I'd like to do during this video is cover 3 main areas. The first thing is helping you to get to know yourself better. The reason I want to encourage you to do this is the more you understand yourself, you understand what your drivers are, what you love to do, what you're good at, where you want to go, the better decision you will be able to make as to what is the right career choice for you. So we'll start off with getting to know yourself, and then I want to try and help you make product management as a career a little bit more real, and I'll give you some sort of tips and techniques how you can do that. And finally, I'll put those 2 things together. So we'll take what you know about yourself, we'll take what you've learnt about product management as a career, and we'll see if there's a match. So let's start with big question, who am I? So first of all, I'm going to recommend you try and think carefully about your strengths and your skills. If you want to know the difference, strengths tend to be things that we have naturally, that sort of we've sort of developed from childhood. So, for example, if you find that it's easy for you to get on with people, make relationships with people, that's probably a strength. Great if you want to get into product management. It's all about stakeholder management, so really good strength to have. Skills tend to be things that we have learnt. So they might be hard skills. So some of the technical skills you'll learn on a product management course, for example, would be hard skills. And then there's the softer skills. So if you want to move into management, say, you'll learn leadership skills, and they're soft skills. But really, it doesn't matter what they're called. What I'd like you to do is list what you are good at. So in a moment, I'm going to suggest you just pause the video and contemplate your strengths and your skills. Start the list. You might find this a little bit difficult. And if you do, just try and stand back and reflect on what you do in a normal day. Whether that's at work, whether that's at uni, whether that's in your hobbies. But just think about the things that you're doing that you're good at. So it may be if you go to the office, you start up a conversation with someone. Again, that's because you're good at building those relationships. It may be that you sit down at your desk and an email's come in and it's a problem that you need to solve. Great, you're good at problem solving. There you go, using another one of your strengths. You may go onto a meeting and come up with an idea that no one else has thought of. You're a creative person. That's one of your skills. So your strengths, rather. So just think about what you do in a day. The other thing to think about is what lands on your desk. What are the things that you're given that other people don't tend to be? The reason they're given to you is because people know that you're good at them and they know you'll do it well. So, think about those things you get that your colleagues, your friends don't seem to have to deal with. They're the things that you're good at. Also, think about positive feedback that you've been given. So it may be formal feedback, so you may have appraisals, or it may be verbal feedback. So someone, you do something for them, say, oh, actually, that's a really good piece of work. Well done. Thank you so much for doing that. So it's that more informal feedback, positive feedback that you've been given. But I want you to try and capture some of that. As I said before, the more you can understand your strengths and skills, the better decisions you'll make. One of the really effective things to do when you're thinking about understanding your strengths and your skills is to ask other people. And the reason that's useful is often the things that we are really, really good at, we take for granted. Because we're good at them, they just come naturally to us. So, but other people actually see that you're doing that. So I think here of an example of driving a car. So, I get in a car and drive it, don't even think about it as a skill that I'd learned. But I remember a few years ago when I was trying to teach my eldest to drive a car when he was a teenager, first time I went out with him, I suddenly realised all the things you have to think about when you're driving a car. So that was a skill I was taking for granted that I'd learned. So I really, really encourage you to ask other people, and they'll come up with some great things that will probably be a real confidence boost to you. So I'm going to suggest you just pause the video for a second and just contemplate some of those things to start that list of your skills and strengths. Okay, well, hopefully you've started that list. Now I want you to move on to things that you love to do. Now, these may match your skills, and hopefully they will in some things, but they may not. So the reason for doing this is if you can get a career that does a lot of things that you love doing, then brilliant. That's going to be a fabulous career for you. You're going to really enjoy that career. So try and identify those things that you enjoy, that you love to do. Again, difficult exercise perhaps, but things that may help is think about times when you've really, really felt in the zone. When you've got your head down and time just disappears because you're loving what you're doing so much. Think about what you're doing there. What would you like to do more of? Think about what you're confident doing. Often the things we enjoy most are the things that we're confident in. Also, think about those moments at work or uni or hobbies that you're doing when it just felt really great. It just stands out for you as being a really great moment. And try and work out why it felt so good. So, for example, you may have completed a piece of work and you may say, great, yeah, love that. I remember that. Stands out for me as being a really good time. But why was it so good for you? Was it the fact that you'd finished something, you were a completer finisher, you'd like to see that end product? So that's what you'd like to reproduce in a job role. It may be that you loved it because you were given external compliments. Few people say, that's great, well done, that's a fantastic piece of work you just did. You like that external validation. Or it could be inside, it just felt great. You knew that you'd done a really good piece of work and you got that internal satisfaction. So you want more moments like that. Or it could be you worked with a team. You loved getting on with the team. There was different ideas. It was just a great, vibrant project for you. And again, that's something you want to replicate. So note that down. I'm also going to encourage you to think about the things that you enjoy that perhaps you're not quite there yet in terms of your own development. So the skills that can be developed. It's great if you can identify these because you'll know where to then go to be able to develop those skills further. So don't just think about things that you're very good at that you enjoy. Think about things you enjoy, but maybe you can develop a little bit further. And then take all those things and analyse what they have in common, why they stand out for you, and try and get a list. It could be that they have in common the fact that you're really, really busy, right, for being a product manager. It could be that it's because there were lots of different parts to it. There was a lot of variety. Again, really good thing as a project manager. So just think about what those moments, the times when you felt good, the times you're in the zone, what they have in common, and note that down. Final thing in terms of getting to know yourself is thinking about what you want to achieve longer term in your career. Again, a difficult thing to do. But the reason I'm suggesting it now is if you understand where you're going, it ensures that you start off in the right direction and it stops you going down a cul-de-sac. So, for example, there might be something bright and shiny and new over here that you think, yeah, I'd love that. And you would for a while. But it either leads you to a dead end or leads you down a path that you really don't want to take. So if you understand your direction of travel, it will really help you make the right first step towards that career goal. And don't worry if you can't be precise in this. I'm not going to suggest that in 10 years' time you want to hold this job title, but it's more, as I say, general direction of travel. So it might be that you think, well, I really like being an expert in things and I'd like to be seen as a subject matter expert. So in 5 years, I'd like to be seen as a subject matter in X. Or it could be that you think, I really like people and I'd like to, as I develop my career, go into a leadership role and manage people. So that's something worth noting. So whatever you go into, you need to make sure you can grow it into a leadership role. The other thing to think about when you're thinking about the future is trying to think of anything that you would regret not doing. The reason I'm saying that is as we get older, it's the things that we don't do, that we haven't done, that we regret and they need to wear to us, rather than the things that maybe we tried and didn't work out. Now, as I said before, this isn't easy. So there's an exercise I'm going to suggest you try. And think about a very, very good friend that you have right now. And for some reason, you lose contact with that friend. And then in 10 years' time, you bump into that friend in the street and you decide to go for a coffee or a glass of wine. What is it? Note down what you would like to say to that friend about what's happened to you in those intervening 10 years. Now, this will be everything. It won't just be your job. But to be honest, I'm a big believer is your work is a big part of your life, not separate from it. But you might find that something comes out of that exercise about something that you would like to achieve, that you'd like to do before your career finishes. So just pause for a second again and just have a think about that and note down the things you'd like to say to that friend. Okay, great. So we have thought about ourselves long and hard. It's now time to learn a little bit more about product management as a career. And the more real you can make it, the better you'll be able to evaluate whether it's an option or not. So first thing to do is to look at the job boards, put the term product manager in, and pull off quite a few descriptions. Now, there is some variation in what product managers do. There are similar themes, but there are slightly different paths they can take. So pull a few together and see which ones attract your attention and notice the qualities that they're looking for. So if you watch Laura's video, you'll know it's things like relationship management, telling a story very well, making things very clear, you adapt very well, those sorts of things. So pull those job descriptions together to get those common themes. The other thing you can do on job boards and LinkedIn is to have a look at future career paths. So put product management as a title, but perhaps put a large salary in just to see the direction people have taken. And you can also do this on LinkedIn by actually going to LinkedIn and typing the term product manager when you're searching for people. Put yourself on privacy first, probably, and then just seek out all the people that are currently product managers, perhaps in sectors or areas that you're interested in, and see what paths they've taken. And the other thing I'm going to suggest you do is be bold and contact some of those people. Because if you can speak to people who do the role or have done the role, they will be able to give you a really, really clear picture. And the more people you talk to, the better knowledge you're going to get of product management. And also, obviously, don't forget the Q&A on the 3rd of August, where you'll be able to ask lots of questions and speak to Janet and Laura, both of whom know lots and lots about product management. So identify people on LinkedIn, and as I say, be bold. My daughter did this recently. She was considering what to do after uni, and she went onto LinkedIn. She found a few people who are currently doing the role that she thought she wanted to do, and she had 2 or 3 great conversations with people, and she learned a lot, and actually she's decided that's going to be the career path for her. People love to help you, particularly if you were thinking about doing the job that they do. So do reach out. Also, look around you in your current organisation, friends and family. You may know people who do product management as a job right now, but even if you don't, the people that you know may know people. So let people know you're looking to talk to people who are currently product managers or been in that role, just to give you a bit of advice. And I bet you'll uncover a few people to be able to give you that advice. So you've learned about yourself, we've made it real. Now it's time to put those two things together. So map your strengths and skills that you've learned about yourself against what's required from a product manager, that you've learned from Laura's video, you've learned from the Q&A, and you've learned from the research that you've done. Look at your long-term career ambitions, the direction you want to go in, and match that against what you've learned in the future career path for a product manager. So it's not just will you enjoy the job in a few years, will you enjoy the job in 10 years' time? Then I'd take a piece of paper and do the list of positive things about becoming a product manager and some of the negative things about being a product manager. But just be careful with your negatives. Make sure that you're not putting barriers in the way. It's easier not to do something and think of 1,000,001 reasons why I don't want to be a product manager, but actually it might be just you playing it safe. You might have that really warm, comfy comfort blanket around you. Inaction is easier than action, but actually those barriers aren't real, and it could be exactly the right thing you do. So just test those negatives, make sure they're not false ones. The other thing I'm going to encourage you to do is just take a moment and pause and think about all you've learned about yourself. Think about what you've learned about being a product manager. And just imagine yourself in a few years' time doing that job. How does that make you feel? It might make you feel a bit scared, but if it also makes you feel really excited inside, then it's the thing for you to do. Best of luck in all you do, and hopefully you'll join us tomorrow, 3rd of August, at 12 o'clock British Standard Time for the Q&A session. Thank you for your time.